Hey folks, Naveen Girishankar here of the Economic Security and Technology Department here at CSIS. There's been a lot of talk about the AI infrastructure build-out. Today we're talking about the human infrastructure challenge for AI. Not since World War II has the demand for skilled trade labor and national security converged more clearly than it has today. And I am joined by Carl Smith, former director at Niskanen Center, and a Bloomberg columnist and my co-author on a paper we just put out on the labor needs of the AI infrastructure build-out. So we're going to talk through this today, walk you through our analysis. Let me start with the punchline, and then I'm going to ask Carl how we actually modeled that. And Carl's done some phenomenal work on this. The punchline is by 2030, we estimate, in the high case, 140,000 more skilled workers are going to be needed. What I mean by that is construction workers, electricians, HVAC operators, welders, heavy machinery operators. And this is a golden opportunity for creating a durable pathway to the middle class across the United States. Now, Carl.
Yes.
How did we get to that number? And I'm showing the chart here that actually lays out how the scenario plays out over the next several years to 2030.
Yeah, so underneath this scenario, or underneath this chart we have, we actually did three scenarios. We did a sort of low case that represented what we thought if like AI was nearing a bubble and was probably going to pop, a medium case that represented if AI was going to be something like the original computer revolution, and then a high case that projected AI to keep growing at the accelerated rate it's growing right now, at least through 2030 and beyond. And so this comes from the high case, right? And so when we put it all together, we estimated that we're going to need, like Naveen said, about 140,000 total skilled workers. Of that, somewhere around 40,000 electricians, pipe fitters, I think is about 20. Heavy machinery operators, it's about 20 as well. A big chunk of construction laborers, and a lot of those positions are skilled. Sometimes we think of construction laborers as not being skilled, but those positions are skilled. And then welders, right? Because to put together these data centers requires a really complex mix of technical sort of like skills, craftsman type skills.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is that this is building on some previous work that Carl had done. And before we joined forces on this. And that work modeled what the energy demands are, the capital demands, and the leading edge chip demands are of the AI data center build out. And I want to linger on this for a minute because it's really important in this type of work to lay out scenarios because no one knows exactly how the future is going to play out. So before we get into the particulars of how we're going to solve this problem, Carl, take us through the three scenarios that we elaborated here and why we did those, because they're based on some historical antecedents,
right,
that we think could be replicated or could play out once again when it comes to the AI revolution. So what are those three and how did those lead to the elaboration of these scenarios?
So the first scenario, the lowest scenario, was something like the dot-com boom. That was just a few years of intense build out before it sort of crashed. We noticed that dot-com was a major sort of event in America, but in our case, it's the small case. The second or medium case was the PC build out from the mid 80s, into the very early 90s, that sort of transformed office work in America and eventually around the world. And then the third case, the really big case, was the second industrial revolution. And so that's the period about 1880 to about 1905, when electricity, more than anything else, revolutionized the entire way that society was organized.
Yeah, so these are three, let's think of them as diffusion scenarios. And the last one is the one that you hear most about in the press. That's the one that a lot of the folks in the tech community are talking about. That's what a lot of folks across town are talking about. So let's just anchor to that because that's what you see on screen. And so what you did was you modeled the energy needs, the capital needs, and then we've now together added the labor needs.
Right.
It's because we started hearing from the private sector that, hey guys, remember, it's energy, yes. It's capital, yes, but don't forget that labor is now a binding constraint. Tell us a little bit more about what we heard.
So I think, from construction companies, told us that like they were facing already, tight constraints around particularly electricians, finding like skilled electricians. They even noted at the time, and we certainly confirmed that the pipeline of apprenticeships was like too tight to be able to supply workers, because all these skilled crafts here, the way you train for them is you go through an apprenticeship process somewhere between 3 and 5 years. You work underneath an experienced laborer, and then you become a journeyman and you can work on your own. And so in order to build up the numbers over time, you have to have the pipeline, now. And so the concern about already seeing some tightness and then the pipeline being limited was what we heard from the private sector.
So you jump to an important question, which is just assume for now that this scenario is what plays out. And you're talking about the 140,000 across these different trades. So what does that mean in terms of building the pipeline? Now, hopefully you all can see this chart and it's in the paper, but what Carl has done here, we took the estimates for what the output of various apprenticeship programs are,
right,
using that scenario to look at what the active apprenticeships are and what the additional seats are that are required to hit those targets. So walk through that with us, Carl.
In order to get the extra about 40,000 electricians that we'll need a year or whatever, we're going to have to move the apprenticeship up to 53,000 additional seats. That's about a 45% expansion in overall apprenticeships. For pipe fitters, there are 84,000 now. We'll need 35,000 seats. That's about the same. Laborers is actually the biggest jump, from 28,000 to 81,000. That's about an 80% expansion. And then welders is a little bit bigger still, about from 15,000 to 20,000 more, and that's a 136% expansion.
We're talking somewhere between 42 to 138%, depending on the trades you're talking about, through 2030, right? So even if this scenario is slightly off or even meaningfully off, these are still very big numbers. And what that means is we need to focus on the pipeline. So who's generating the pipeline of these workers? It's apprenticeships, and that also means people training these folks. So again, this is an aggregate number. I would argue, and Carl and I are doing some more work on this, that when you disaggregate this geographically across the United States, some locations may find even more acute binding constraints around labor than others. Obviously, people are mobile. We have a country where people move. But it's good to have a sense of both the aggregate and, in the short term, what could happen in particular locales. So more on that to come. What are your plans? What are your thoughts on how to actually close this gap? And you have some ideas that we put together in the paper, including like getting retirees to start mentoring and working, expanding significantly what the DOL is already planning, the Department of Labor, in terms of apprenticeships. So hit some of these points on how to solve this problem.
Yeah, so I think slowing retirements is probably big. One of the reasons why we need so many additional apprentices, in some cases even more than the additional workers, is because for electricians we have a very steep retirement curve. So if we can push the retirement curve back just even by 2 years, 3 years, that'll take us a long way towards meeting this demand. At the same time, the Department of Labor operates, apprenticeship programs or oversees apprenticeship programs in various states. The states, regulate those programs. I think, it's probably incumbent upon the governors in those states to work for like the expansion, lowering perhaps some of the requirements for the number of instructors that they have, allowing people to work earlier under an expert to get us more apprentices through the pipeline.
Yeah. So just folks should know, and we say this in the paper, the AI action plan that the administration put out, to its credit, lays out this issue. It identifies this issue. Actually, we added these numbers to help get a sense of what the implementation challenges would be. But it identifies the issue of labor and the need to build apprenticeships and the need to actually build the pipeline. We think that it's good to have orders of magnitude in mind. And in order to address that, What we recommend is a consortium model that brings public and private, federal and state and local together to actually solve this problem. And there's some good examples. If you look at the CHIPS Act, the Chips and Science Act, there were some examples of consortia, both in the semiconductor space as well as in the energy space, that are good to build on when it comes to this challenge. And so this is about pooling our resources and our talents and our capabilities and our understanding of where there are opportunities across our vast country, but focused around a singular mission. And so you see those recommendations in the paper. Happy to talk more about them. And what I might suggest is take a look at the paper on csis.org. We welcome your feedback. We want to focus the attention on what is needed for implementation. Finally, let me say this. We're working on another part 2 of this, which has to do with geographic dispersion, or the regional aspects of the AI infrastructure build-out. And what we're very interested in is understanding the readiness of different states to be able to absorb this massive investment across energy and labor and capital. Right. And so, this is just a foreshadow. This is what we're working on right now. And again, we're going to team up on that as well. Any parting thoughts, Carl?
I think you got it. Yeah.
Thank you, and welcome to hopefully what will be a series of commentaries and analyses on the AI infrastructure challenge that's ahead of us. I'm Naveen Girishankar with Carl Smith signing off. Thank you very much.